A man in his 60s stands before a mirror adjusting a blue military-style jacket. He straightens the lapels, checking himself over one last time. His name is Colonel Blood, and he's got a date with destiny. His wife enters the room and asks him what he's doing. "I'm going out," he replies, "and I don't know if I'll be back." She tells him not to be ridiculous, but he doesn't listen. He grabs a rope ladder from the corner, puts it against the outside wall, and begins climbing up. His wife calls after him, begging him to come back, but her pleas are in vain. He makes it to the top of the wall without incident and drops down on the other side. Colonel Blood has successfully scaled the tallest and most secure prison in all of England, the Tower of London. But how did he do it? And why would he risk his life to do so? Well, the answer to both of those questions lies within this case. Inside this case are the crown jewels of England. Specifically, they're the second biggest prize in the collection, only beaten by the sovereign scepter with cross. The imperial state crown is probably the most recognizable piece in the whole collection, though. It's been worn by countless monarchs, including the Queen Mother at the coronation of Queen Elizabeth II and, more recently, King Charles III. Other notable pieces include the sovereign's ring and the Queen's crown. All told, the crown jewels are worth an estimated $3.2 billion. But just how did Colonel Blood manage to steal them? Well, the story starts the day before his daring heist when he visited the Tower of London. As an ex-serviceman, he was given special permission to view the crown jewels. So while other tourists had to stand and gawk at the jewels from a distance through glass cases, Colonel Blood was allowed to get up close and personal. This gave him a chance to see how the jewels were kept, which wasn't very securely, as it turns out. As Blood walked around the room, he noticed that the velvet ropes that kept visitors a safe distance away from the display cases weren't being used. In fact, they were lying loosely on the floor. It didn't take a genius to realize that he could easily cut the ropes, open the cases, and make off with the jewels. But there was one problem. Even if he managed to get past the ropes, the cases themselves were locked with these massive steel bolts. So Blood did some more observing. He noticed that every night the guards left the key for one of the cases sitting on top of the counter right next to the clock tower. Blood knew exactly what he had to do. He would wait until late at night, enter the tower, and steal the key. Then he could crack open the case, grab the jewels, and escape before the sun came up. But getting into the tower was easier said than done. The Tower of London has stood for almost 1,000 years, and in that time it's become a formidable fortress. The tall stone walls are designed to keep people in, not out. Back in Bloody Mary's day, the Queen ordered the construction of a 20-foot-high wall all the way around the complex. And 2.5 centuries later, King Charles II made it even taller, bringing it up to 40 feet. To this day, it remains one of the tallest masonry walls in all of London. But Colonel Blood wasn't worried. He had a secret weapon, something that would allow him to scale the seemingly insurmountable walls, a rope ladder. Now you might be wondering, didn't I already say that? Well, yes, I did. But that wasn't the rope ladder he used during the heist. That was the one he used to practice with. Colonel Blood had spent weeks scaling the wall in the dead of night. He had climbed the wall so many times, in fact, that he wore down the stones and made little divots all along the way. Each night he would climb up the ladder he hid in the nearby bushes, then shimmy up the grooves he'd made in the wall. Once he reached the top, he would crawl along the flat section of the wall until he got to the clock tower. There he would drop down, pick up the key, and head back to his ladder. He would repeat this process every night, always returning home empty-handed. But the night of the heist would be different. On July 25, 1672, Colonel Blood put on his finest clothes, grabbed a rope ladder, and set off for the Tower of London. He followed the same routine, climbing up his secret ladder and making his way to the clock tower. Only this time, instead of returning home, he dropped down and picked up the key. Now that he had the key, the rest was easy. He unlocked the case, grabbed the crown jewels, and headed for the exit. But as he was leaving, the guard noticed him and yelled, "Stop, thief!" and gave chase. Colonel Blood heard the commotion, turned around and smacked the guard right in the face with his hat. Then he ran as fast as he could towards the exit. The guard was hot on his heels, though, and as they rounded a corner, another guard stepped in front of Blood and blocked his path. Colonel Blood knew he couldn't outrun the guard, so he did the next best thing. He flung the heavy briefcase he was carrying at the guard, knocking him out cold. Then he ran as fast as he could and disappeared into the night. For the next 6 hours, Colonel Blood ran through the dark streets of London, hiding in the bushes and under the sheds of houses. By the time the sun started coming up, he was exhausted. He needed to find somewhere to hide until nightfall, so the authorities wouldn't find him. Eventually, he found a secluded spot near a marsh and laid down. When he woke up, he was in enemy territory. He'd somehow gotten lost and wound up in the middle of a village about 20 miles from London. Colonel Blood wasn't a fan of country life. He missed the hustle and bustle of the city, not to mention the food, so he did the first thing he could to get back to London. He hitched a ride on a farmer's wagon. As soon as he got back to the city, he went straight to his lawyer and told him everything. The lawyer listened patiently to the entire story and asked for the crown jewels. Then he did something that surprised Colonel Blood. He called the police. It turns out the lawyer had been hired by the king to recover the stolen jewels, and Colonel Blood was now technically a wanted man. He figured he'd have to flee the country, so he tried to bribe the lawyer to help him escape to France. But the lawyer refused, saying that it was his duty to uphold the law. With no other options, Colonel Blood gave himself up to the authorities. He expected to be thrown in prison and maybe even hung, but surprisingly, that didn't happen. Instead, he was given a noble trial by the House of Lords, where they found him guilty of treason and sentenced him to death by hanging. On August 9, 1672, Colonel Blood was taken to the gallows and hanged in front of a crowd of thousands. He died believing that he'd be remembered as a hero, but sadly that wasn't the case. In fact, he became known as the infamous Colonel Blood, the man who stole the crown jewels. But despite the fact that he was executed, Colonel Blood never revealed where he hid the jewels. Some believe he actually threw them away, dropping them in the river and letting the current carry them out to sea. Others think he buried them somewhere in London and planned to dig them up later, only to die before he had the chance. What we do know is that all the jewels eventually made their way back to the Tower of London. Eventually, the case remained empty for 100 years. Finally, in 1773, the British government decided enough was enough. They commissioned a new case that was both fire and waterproof and placed the jewels inside. Since then, the case has never been opened, not even during World War II when the jewels were evacuated from the tower and moved deep underground. In total, 5 people have died trying to break into the case since it was made, but none of them succeeded. Maybe it's best we leave the jewels alone. What do you think? Should the case be opened once a year so everyone can take a peek inside, or should it stay locked forever? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, please be sure to like and subscribe. It really helps out the channel and pushes our videos to more people. Thanks for watching. See you next time.